this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. In my pursuit to always keep you all intrigued and on your toes with something new and exciting, today we are going to talk to someone who is near and dear to me. I got the opportunity to meet her this year at a retreat. We had some conversations and I got to see this idea that she had about writing a children's book really come to life. And since we've met, this has just taken off. So I wanted to share her process with all of you and introduce her. So Katie Gibbons, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm really looking forward to delving in a little bit deeper. So please introduce yourself to the audience. Let them all know who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, hello, I'm Katie Gibbons. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor located in the middle of the country, right here in Illinois. I started out my counseling career in the schools. I always had this draw to helping kids. That was always my draw. So I started in the schools as a crisis counselor, loved it. But as therapists, I always wanted more. So then I dove into private practice, had a very successful private practice for many years. Our dear friend Laura Long from Your Badass Therapy Practice coined my phrase when I first started working with her. I was full and fucked. I was seeing 40 people a week by myself because I didn't know how to say no. Anyway, that's a whole different podcast, but that's kind of where I started. And I was in a quasi group. So we were independent contractors sharing a space, and it just kind of became very unhealthy. Just was not a great environment for me. So I branched out on my own brick and mortar building, and loved it. Insert chronic illness. Unfortunately, I have lupus. I've managed it for many years, but I started chemotherapy to treat a condition with my kidneys, and it just got to be too much. So, balancing rent and building and clients and all of that, I made the very tough decision that it was time to back away from that. And, I love to say that there's so many God things in my life. And one God thing was another therapist in the area was looking for her own office, and it was painless. She took my office, she took my lease. I really saw this as the right path I was going on. And I always knew I'd do something because we can't just sit and do nothing, even though I'm supposed to be stress-free and relaxing. Nope, still got to do something. So I always had this idea in the back of my mind as a therapist that I would write a children's book. Mm-hmm. It's very near and dear to me in the area of adoption. I'm adopted. My kids are adopted. And I worked with adopted families and children. So for years, I've had this book living rent-free in my brain. And, this gave me an opportunity once I slowed down from work to really kind of think about it. But you know how life goes. You just get caught up in other things. So here I quasi-retired in January of this year. And it wasn't until we met that all that time, January to May, I hadn't done anything on this book, but it's like, oh, it's here. I just need the
Mhm.
time to get it out. And going on that retreat, as you witnessed the birth of my book, it was crazy, Julia, because just being there in a different environment alone, not at home, it just like flowed. It just flowed. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm working on this book. I see a handful of people here and there, just no
Mhm.
new clients that I've worked with over the years, just to keep my
Sure.
brain going. But yeah, I'm really entering this new realm of author.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So, before we delve into more of what that's looked like, I have to speak to what I experienced on that retreat, and it sounds like you did too. I was so inspired. I felt
Mhm.
so supported. I'm just thinking of how everybody responded when we would go around the table and everybody would share what they were working on. And it was emotional. I remember
Right.
getting really teary eyed when
Right.
this came to fruition for you. And you spoke to it. It's removing ourselves from the day to day. It's being around like minded, supportive people. It's sharing an experience that only those people are having. And it really sounds like it catapulted you. Can you speak to that piece at all?
Oh, it. I agree. It was
Mm-hmm.
such. It's an environment I've never experienced before. As an adult, as a therapist, I've
Mm-hmm.
been to lots of retreats, lots of professional development. There was something so special about the group of
Yes.
us, the personalities. I loved we were all working on different things. And
Mm-hmm.
just this idea of, hey, we're all therapists, but we all want to do something more.
Right.
We're pushed. And I think being with strong women, strong
Mm-hmm.
people supporting each other, that's
Yeah.
really rare and beautiful when you find it because there wasn't any competition, any, like, oh, I can't believe she's trying to do that. None of that. And it just really, I think it just kind of opened that part of me
Mm.
that everything else could be set aside because I truly felt safe. I trusted it. And
Yes.
I could just let it go. And, the
Mm-hmm.
process was just kind of crazy and how I did it and how it just all came forward. But I remember when I was ready to like read it to everybody, it's like, okay, guys, 10 o'clock, I'm reading my book. And it was just the tears and the emotions and
Mm-hmm.
how proud I felt the pride and love and
Yes.
support from everybody. And I can't help but smile every time now I see each stage of this book because where it started was just so special.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you sharing that. I am so grateful to have been a part of that moment. And I just have to comment on how everyone is kept in touch. We still have our chat. We
Yep.
have all become Facebook friends. I recently saw Laura at Whitney Owens Summit in Georgia. She spoke, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
And seeing all of your journeys with what you share online and being able to have you on the podcast, and it's amazing because it's the ripple effect. Like, not
Hmm.
only did we experience that, but we can continue to experience versions of that in our own ways. So from May until now, so we're recording at the end of October.
Yeah.
Fill us in on what the steps have been, what the process has looked like, and what stage the book is at now.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, this was an area I knew zilcho about. Nothing. Zero, not even a clue. And so, I mean, it took a lot of research. Like, once I had this written, script of what it was, then it's like, okay, now what do I do? And
Mhm.
I just started the deep dive of children book authors, Facebook groups, all of that. You talk about our group keeping in contact. It was pretty amazing because, Amy, one of the people there, messaged me and she's like, oh my gosh, I just saw this on Facebook. You need to join this group. And it was this children's authors, illustrators, and just the support. People are
Yes.
thinking about me and my book when you don't even realize it. So I did. I joined those type of groups to get a footing of what's the process.
Hmm.
And so the first thing that I kind of figured out I needed to do was find an illustrator. And let me tell you, buckle up because that's a wild ride. It is just trying to figure out, okay, where do I go? How do I do this? And I knew what I wanted it to look like. Like I knew in my head what I wanted this book to look like. But I got the box of my kids' children's books out, and I'm
Mhm.
looking and reading and checking out like styles of art, and I just knew. So there's a few different avenues people can go down. There's websites, but there's a lot of people who use like AI. There's a lot of scams out there. So you just have to
Yeah.
really be careful. And I ended up using a website called Upworks
Hmm.
where there's all kinds of independent contractors on there, and you kind of post your job and then people like apply for it. So I posted this job of I'm writing a children's book, it's about adoption, and it's near and dear to my heart. I'm looking for an illustrator. It's not going to be a long book. Like I read back my description. It's like, how did anybody apply for this? Because it sounded so like, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. I'm writing a book. And I had by the next morning 46 people apply. And
Well,
it
clearly, when
was,
you were at work, it spoke to people.
yeah. And I just thought, okay, I just need to look at their portfolios. Like that was the only way I knew to whittle through it is to see if their art matched my idea of what this was going to look like. There was
Hmm.
one woman who her pictures, it's like, that's it. That's exactly what I want it to be. And so I messaged back, you do this back and forth of cost. And that was a whole nother thing of researching what do people charge, that just, whew, anyone who's listening to this, just private message me because it's a lot. But she, I really liked her artwork. We agreed on a price, we agreed on the contract. And let me tell you, this is how wild this is. Another God thing. This is the first time she was ever on this website. She's a full-time professional illustrator for Scholastic, Simon and Schuster, Penguin Press. She just wanted a side hustle. I mean, how crazy is that? It's like, this is my side hustle.
Wow.
She wanted that. And it just instantly, it's like, this is exactly what it's supposed to be. From the first sketches, which is what she does, I send her pictures of my characters, just an idea of, the book, from sketches to color to font. I mean, you never knew how many fonts you would look at to, put in a children's book, but it's a lot. So my hope was it would be ready to go and launched for November, which is Adoption Month, National Adoption
Hmm.
Month. I'm shooting for Christmas now, but that's okay. Like it's okay. I want it to be perfect. I want it to be right.
Yeah.
And before I forget, the other thing that made this person my person, this
Yeah.
illustrator, is she said in her application to me, regardless of if you choose me, the world needs this book. So don't stop.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, that's connection. That's
Brought
something.
the heart into it as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I'm right. I'm at the point now where I'm waiting. I just approved the font and just approved, what the font looks like on my pages. She will format it for hardcover, soft cover, and a Kindle version. And I'm doing self publishing. Holy cow, that's a whole nother avenue that I haven't even gotten into yet. So that'll be another podcast. Like, whew, but it'll be distributed once it's there to Amazon, Walmart, Target, Barnes and Noble, all the big stores. And don't worry, you'll be bombarded with the link because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
It's not just because, oh, look at me, I wrote a book. It's such it's just such a part of me. It is
Mhm.
so special to me. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about it all day. I can continue talking about it, but
So, can you share with the listeners what they can expect from this book and what the title is?
sure.
Okay.
And so, can I talk a little bit about just how who my characters are and all of that?
Please.
Okay, so this, going back to the adoption piece, it's near and dear to my heart, and I just wanted to write a book that spoke to adopted kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an adopted person, there are just pieces of it that people who aren't adopted just don't feel. They just don't understand. And that's okay. But it's unique to being adopted. And I really wanted that to be normalized in characters where, it's so many books out there on adoption are about the parent, why we had to adopt. You were born in my heart, not my tummy. These concepts that are really not speaking to that adopted child. It's explaining the situation, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not really speaking to them. And so I always thought, like, okay, what does most everybody adopt at some point in their life? A pet. And I look at my pets, cat, dog, they're both adopted, both came from different situations. And I thought, these are my characters. I'm doing this with Pablo, my cat, Bandit, my
Mm-hmm.
dog. And the series is The Adventures of Bandit and Pablo.
Mm-hmm.
Each book has its own name. And right now, one is going to publication, but I have three more written. And so this book is The Adventures of Bandit and Pablo. We Are Brothers. And it's really an introduction to these characters, an introduction to their becoming brothers through adoption. There's a little psychoeducation in it for parents because I wanted to introduce some real emotions that adopted kids feel. And I think one of the most important ones that I highlight in this kids book, because it's a wonderful kids book, is the fact that there are times those adopted kids are going to feel sad or have these thoughts that have to do with their biological family that has nothing to do with their love and happiness for where they're at. And I
Mm-hmm.
really tried to highlight that in this book where it's like there's some days you feel sad and there's some days you feel happy. And it's okay. It's all okay. And I'm just so excited about it.
Mm. Well, it's infectious. It's so inspirational. I love how you were so open to the spiritual connection where, things were happening and you were
Mhm.
so aware that timing and the right people and, knowing that a choice you were making was right is something that
Right.
wasn't lost on you.
No.
And from May until now, I know that this has been sitting in your mind for a long time, but that is not long
It,
for
it's
all of
really
this
not.
play out. So I wonder how much of that is you and this passion that drives this project. Is that a realistic time frame for most people if anybody listening is considering something similar?
I think by the time it is published, if you have it written and know what you want, it's realistic.
Yeah.
Because I knew what I wanted it to look like. So I instantly could just go through portfolios until I saw that.
Hmm.
But I have learned that a lot of people, there's a couple barriers. Budget is a barrier for a lot of people. And just not like they've written something, but they don't really know
Yeah.
what that concept or idea is. And so, my advice to that is really do the research, invest in the professional illustrator because they're a
Hmm.
professional too. And my illustrator, Kelly O'Neill, she's amazing. She has helped me so much with jumping on a Zoom call. Hey, I have some questions because she's a professional.
Hmm.
And it's really made the process so much easier when as a professional, you rely on another professional. And I think
Absolutely.
we kind of learned that when we met too. It's like we all have knowledge. We don't have to fight over knowing everything. We fall on the people that know that and say,
Hmm.
hey, can you help me? And I think if you're open to that and you really get that good partner, then yeah, I mean, about 6 months is a great timeline for it.
Wow. So I can feel the excitement, and it must be really hard to remain patient.
Oh,
But
it is. It
huge
is.
payoff in terms of just being able to share this with the world, having it be public, having that visual, something tangible. So I'm assuming that that's what's helping to get you through this last
Yeah.
leg.
I can't imagine what it's going to feel like to hold the book in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because even now, I mean, okay, so there's that little part of all of us that it's like, okay, is it just me that loves this? Like, does this really sound okay? And I read it again, even the printed off paper, and it's like, yes, this is exactly what I want it to be. I love it, love it, love
Mm-hmm.
it. And I've got my own little beta test group that anytime like the colors came out, the fonts came out, it's a mixture of, family, friends, people who've adopted, who have young kids, because I really want it to be something that isn't just, oh, I really like this. I want to get the feedback from this little group of, 10 people, and they've given me fabulous feedback, especially with
Yeah.
the font. Something I did not think of when
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of fonts that make the A's like that old fashioned A instead of the lowercase a we all learned. I would have never thought of that. But one of the people in my group is an elementary teacher, and
Yeah.
she's like, that font's really hard for kids to read. Go with this one. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
getting that feedback and being open to it has
Yeah.
just been wonderful. But getting that book, holy cow. I
Mm-hmm.
I think I will weep. I will just weep when I have it.
Oh, understandably so. Well, with the feedback that you're getting from this group, and hopefully the reaction that you got when we didn't even have the visual and we're sitting
Yeah.
around just listening to the sentiment and the words and learning your characters, that also speaks volumes. So, if that's any indication, it's going to be very well received.
Yeah. I hope
So,
so. I'm excited.
yeah, I have every confidence. And obviously, like you're saying, you've done your research. And so the books that are available out there, you really see this filling a void. And not to say that there aren't any, but there is
Right.
definitely a space
Right.
for a book that is really going to resonate with the experience of an adopted child. And so that is helpful regardless, that you really honed in on that, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And that you also come from this varied experience of not only your own personal journey, but your own children. So being the parent, but also hearing about their own
hmm
journey, and then the work you did. So you've got the trifecta going
That's
for you.
that's what I always say. It's the trifecta. Um,
Absolutely.
this book, the We Are Brothers concept, really is dedicated to my sons because I adopted them both at the same time, and
Hmm.
I adopted them from Belarus, an international adoption, and they are so different yet have such a respect and a tight bond as brothers that on their they're 16 months apart. So when my youngest turned 18, they both went and got a tattoo in the same exact spot on their chest in Roman numerals of their adoption date. And they said it's the day we became brothers. And for me,
Oh,
it's like the day I became a mom. And that's where this book, this first one, We Are Brothers, is really inspired by, because just watching them connect. And
mhm.
sure, it helped that their mom was adopted also. I was able to really keep it an open conversation, an open, dialogue in their growing up,
Mhm.
that it's wonderful to see that.
Oh my gosh. I so appreciate you sharing that because it's such a personal touch. And I love that people will get to hear from you where this really came from and that it really is not only a passion project, but something that is so personal and has an
Yeah.
impact on some of the most important people in your own life.
Yes.
And how incredible to have something that can transcend generations and be something that lives on and that can speak to people in a very unique way. It's wild. So,
Yeah. It
very
is.
impressed.
And, just to have other books and have a series. And then my hope is then it'll grow into a young reader series. So right now we're at that preschool stage. It's more picture books,
Mm-hmm.
where the pictures help the child with the words and the story.
Sure.
I really have these ideas then for those young readers, those early chapter books. And I'm really excited about it. I tell my husband all the time, when Bandit and Pablo are at the Fox or they're on ice at Enterprise Center, where I live, it's like that's when I know I've made it. When they're
Mm-hmm.
doing a musical number to the adventures of Bandit and Pablo. Sky's the limit, right?
Well, if that's your vision, but in all reality, just hearing all that went into this, you're there. So I have to ask, with this transition that you went through and the decision that you made in January, and then really kicking this into high gear in May, and what a project this has been.
Yeah.
Once this comes to fruition and it is available, what do you see for yourself now, having had this experience? You're obviously still in the throes of it. What are some thoughts that you have about where to take things from here?
Well, I definitely want to stick with the writing. I kind of made a little promise to myself that before I tried to do, two, three, four books at a time, I wanted to know this process start to finish. And
Yeah.
so then that just helps me fine tune it, be better prepared. My illustrator already said she's in. She's in for the series. And so I really just see myself being able to focus on writing, being able
Hmm.
to focus on future books, being able to focus on marketing this because it is my little baby. It is my passion
Yeah.
project. I've already looked into coloring books and bookmarks and plushies because I really believe in this. I really
Hmm.
believe these characters are lovable and will connect with these kids.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where I see my focus being.
Awesome.
Now, with that being said, I can't let go of my license. I'm still there because that's such an identity, as you know. When you
Hmm.
work with people, when people are your commodity and therapy and helping people, it's hard to just give that up. It's really hard to walk away from it. So I still dabble in that. I still see myself doing, a retreat at least once a year and
Yes.
just keeping myself up to date with all of those. But this new children's book author title is really my new jam. It's really my new thing.
Well, it suits you. I'd love to know if you have any tips from what you've experienced so far. If somebody is considering this, or if this has been renting space in their mind, what are some takeaways and things that you might suggest from what you've learned?
My biggest takeaways and suggestions come from the initial writing process.
Yeah.
I was standing in my own way. Nobody else. It was me. This whole idea of no, no one's going to like it. That's not good enough. That's not, can I really do this? All of that stuff. Once I got out of my own way, I used Google Voice to just talk because I'm a verbal processor. I
Mhm.
know I get hung up writing. I can talk forever, like ever and ever. So using Google Voice, which was a suggestion at our retreat we were at, that was just a godsend because I can just talk and I feel so comfortable with that. The other
Mhm.
piece, and this is just words to live by, just have a shitty first draft. Just put it down on paper because you can only go up from there. But once you have something down on paper, then you can start fine tuning it. And that's what I did. I knew I wanted it to rhyme. I knew that I wanted it to kind of have that sing song children's book feel. And so, I mean, as I'm talking, I'm on Google, like, what rhymes with this? What rhymes with this? To just plug words in. And
Yeah.
it didn't take long at all to have that first draft that I knew I would fine tune, but I had it. Like,
Mhm.
finally, I had it. So that would be my biggest advice. Don't get in your own way. If you think it, if you feel it, put it on paper because you can always fine tune it. I had a copy editor that I hired to just go through it, and you think, well, Grammarly and Google, they're going to pick up everything. She had some of the best suggestions and really helped make it even better. And
Mhm.
even she said, so here's this professional copywriter from New York, and she said, this is adorable. I cannot wait to purchase this book. So you get that type of feedback from people. And it does. It just hits me in that place that I know I'm doing the right thing I'm supposed to do. But it really there at the beginning, that's the best thing I can say. And then just trust professionals.
Yeah.
Just trust the professionals that do this.
Mm-hmm. That is so helpful. I am happy to hear that you had the positive experiences that you did with the people that you found. But what you speak to is so transferable to everything, right? That imperfection, imperfect action, we have something within us and it's going to stay there until we allow it to come out. And whatever form, it can always be modified and improved. And it's that snowball effect of once it's finally out there and you're getting feedback and you have that freedom and it's no longer just in your mind. Look at where that's taking you.
Yes.
So
exactly.
So where can people follow along so that we can stay tuned for the release and when this is published and when it's available?
Well, I'm having my website built. I'm hoping for it to be done soon. It's going to be based on my publishing company. So this is another little side piece for people who might be interested in this. When you independently publish, it's the advice I got, it's really smart to just make a publishing company that's yourself, and then you can put that on the back of your books. It can be a launching pad for anything else you do. And in going through this, and like you and I had talked, I want to do this podcast on adoption. This book is just another piece of what I want to bring to the world. And when I was talking to somebody about it, I was saying, there's so many negatives with adoption. You get on some of these Facebook groups, you listen to some of these podcasts, and they either focus on what went wrong, what mental illness to expect, how to deal with the trauma, the abandonment. Like, you get a lot of these messages that this is going to be hard and miserable and these kids are going to be just a mess. Where in reality, all of those themes are part of it, but there's so much joy. There's so much, what I call sunshine that goes with it. And I really just said, I really want to bring the sunshine. I don't want to ignore all these other things because I'm a therapist. I work with these kids. I know what they go through. But I want to bring the sunshine of the other side of that, the positive from it. So my website is going to be www.katieshiningstories.com. My publishing company is Shining Stories because I just think for me, that's my role in this whole area of adoption. And I believe I'm relevant. I am adopted. I did raise adopted kids who are phenomenal. And I work with adoptive families and adopted kids, that trifecta. I know that relevance is there and I have a lot to add and bring to people that isn't so doom and gloom, that isn't so like, oh, here's your list of problems. Or on the other side, there's this negativity of, adoption in general. So I really am hoping the book, the podcast, I'm really hoping to just, again, add some sunshine to it.
So I just want to thank you for not only the work that you've done, the work that you're still doing, but having this concept, seeing it through to fruition, and really speaking to people that need to hear it. And even someone who may not have had that same experience, like some of the people you've been dealing with in this process, can't wait to get their hands on it.
Right.
So the sentiment, it's relatable. It's something that the world needs, and that's incredibly inspiring. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for sharing your journey and some of the backstory with all of us today. I am absolutely going to stay tuned, and I'm happy to share once it's available, and hopefully people will keep their eyes out and save that web address.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you. It means the world
Absolutely.
to me.
I'm really glad that we connected, and this has been a really enjoyable conversation, but also a really inspiring journey, and I'm sure for myself and also the listeners.
Thank you.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.